I'm just gonna call to order. For Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025, 11 a.m. regular meeting of our personnel committee for ReGen Monterey. Regional Waste Management District, and Dale Burns and Wendy Radowski and Chuck Fedori are all here in the forum. And our first order of business is to have an election of our chair and vice chair. Would anyone like to self-nominate? Or I'm gonna nominate Chuck Fedori as our chair. Joss, do you accept?
Okay, I'll take it.
He'll take it. Fantastic.
You want me to say?
I don't know. I'm happy to serve as our vice chair if you're, unless you're interested.
Okay with that.
Are you okay with that? Okay, unless you're interested.
You can do
Dale, if you want to be chair.
it.
Just toss some rock, paper, scissors.
I'm good.
I know the algorithm
I'm
for,
good with you. I'll support you really well.
okay. So, we'll take a motion then for, Chop, Dory as our chair and Wendy Radowski as our vice chair, second. I'll make a motion.
Second.
One second, motion second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We don't, do we have we are also live in Marina, right? Is there any public in Marina present?
There is public, there are no comments.
Okay.
Actually, I'll take that back. There is someone on there. Give me just one moment.
We do have someone in Marina. Okay, we'll take public comment from Marina.
Actually, I just wanted to confirm there was no members of the public here in Marina.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, well then I'm gonna reverse the public hearing. Let's share this once we get, so we will call that good. Okay, is there any public communication for today's meeting? No one's in Marina, no one's here, so we will say thank you for public communications and move on to our discussion and action, improving personal community. Oh, great. Chopped all you have, sorry, I was trying to write ahead. I just took it. Go Chop,
I
yours.
still am trying to get the agenda.
Oh,
And I just wanted to note for the record that, after you announced that I was chair, Dale actually congratulated you, so.
Congratulations.
it's like that for like, we're in all my meetings, so everywhere we are.
I was congratulations. They should want to be
I guess we're on item number 5, discussion action, 5.1. It's the personal committee meeting minutes. Do we have any comments on the personal committee meeting minutes?
9.
Okay, does anybody want to recommend approval?
So moving.
Second.
Second, all right. Motion to approve the personal committee minutes. Any other comments?
It's the first time I've seen minutes, because I haven't been to one of these meetings before, and it was interesting seeing what happens. And the meetings were longer than I thought.
Yes, and the meeting minutes are actually pretty, I would say, recent. Because we get minutes from the city too, but they're like 6 months.
You know, I thought it was well done, so it's well done.
Thank you. All right, so all in favor, say aye.
I
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5.2. Review personnel policies concerning work performance. Reviews and employees, HR 2025-007. Anybody wants to comment on that matter here?
Yes. As this didn't print out my. I use this one that out of my usage. My first question is there anything other than this? Like, are for particular types of jobs, are there other detailed items that cover like safety and other things?
So the, in regard to the original question of what is Region's pay, policy? There are, we can't talk about pay without talking about work performance.
And so to answer your question, Director Byrne, the policy before you is, does not include every aspect of our compensation program. So it describes the program for, the general, employee population. The one exception is the general manager. So, just to give a quick overview of the current policy that you have before you, work performance is managed by department supervisors and managers. We have a annual review process that is in line with the employee pay, merit pay policy. So employees are eligible for a pay step increase based on a 6-step classification pay schedule on an annual basis. So they move up the steps annually from steps 1 through 5, contingent on good performance. And those decisions are made by the frontline supervisors and managers. In regard to the general manager, he's the only classification that does not have a 6-step pay schedule. And his pay is reviewed annually, as you know, during the employee review process. So there is market rate adjustments that are also provided that are not described within this policy. And those are typically, our region's compensation is reviewed, or we do a check-in for market to ensure that they're within market. And we do that mostly in line with labor negotiations. So prior to the expiration of each contract, we pursue or seek a compensation study. And that is how we check to ensure that region's compensation is, within or maintained at market levels. And that includes all of the classifications that are going to be renegotiated. And we basically include, so for example, if we have a contract, delivery contract that is for the Allies unit that expires next year, we try to do the comp study early in the year prior to that labor contract expiring, so that we can compare our region's compensation and employee compensation to the market and include that in the negotiation strategy. So we don't always include all of the classifications when we do the comp studies, but we base it on, the labor contracts that are due for renegotiations. Did I answer your question? I know that was very long-winded.
I don't think so. I think this is not a simple company.
Right,
That's one of the challenges.
it is,
So there's a performance improvement plan. Is there something that, this is an example, is there something behind this document that says what that is and how that works? How long does it last?
the performance improvement plan.
Is it different for each situation? You just craft
Yes,
something to try to help them get over the hurdles that they're facing?
yes, we have a template that I use and I worked with the manager in developing what are the specifics areas of improvement needed. And then what are the specific expectations. And then it includes a check-in or review at 30, 60, 90 days. After the 90 days, the longest we have is for 90 days. There's nothing that prevents management from extending that if management decides that it's necessary, or if the performance issues have not been corrected, then the disciplinary process might be initiated after the PIP concludes at 90 days.
Okay, so I guess the answer to my first question is, for each of these things, there's either, you call them templates, there's more details, specifics about how to execute each of these things.
Yes,
And each department could have a different version of that, like in some departments, safety is a big issue. So you do more discipline about you're not following the safety things. If you're working in the office, not so much.
So PIPs are specific to the individual, and, the templates are, pretty consistent, because it's really the template helps identify what the issues are, clearly identify what the issues are, and then clearly identify what the expectations are going forward and how they can, meet those expectations. So it depends on the issue at hand.
Right, since I haven't been here for very long, is this working?
So, I'll jump in, I think, Purdue's exactly right on, we have templates, there's a step increase component, there's a merit component. That are applied. I think that the approach that we want to be taking is, we've taken a methodology at the last bargaining. And so we identified what the market means, and there's a market median, which is our 0 point, and then we can go up to as high as 10% above the market. And a -5% of the market, that's what we're calling our market area that we want to be in. What we executed on at the last negotiation, so anybody above the 10% market was given a lump sum payout rather than Percival's amounts going into their augmentation, so that they could stay within market. So someone that was at 16% got a lump sum, and hopefully next pay period, they're a lot closer to being within that range. Equally, on the back end, we had seen people falling farther and farther behind the carriage. We had people way out front and people way in back, and the desired area is in the median. And so we created that median, so now people that are below the market are getting a 5% adjustment. If it's warranted, some it may be 1 or 2 right before the market, we'll add that plus the CPI. So those are methodologies that hadn't existed here that we felt were very important for the organization. There was no method to hold people back, without potentially not getting an agreement signed, right? And this was the first attempt to really right-size that, so this is the second year number that we've.
So based on the last comp study, yes, so there was a phased in adjustments that were made.
That are being applied, and so what we're gonna see as a result of that is more people being within the market. So that we can come to term agreements for longer periods of time without having to try to negotiate for the ones that are way under. And still having the ones on top saying, well, I still deserve my increase as well. So they're being done in a different method, and I believe the method is working, so we're in year number 2 of that. I think our results are gonna show more people starting to fall in line with the market. And that's really easier to make adjustments than it is to slow someone down that there is no method, or increase the speed when there is no method. So we've adopted that method, and I believe it's gonna continue to work for us.
So this agenda item, are you telling me at least that you think these policies are good and it's working?
I
Just saying, do you have any ideas? Is that what we're here for?
We brought it forward at the request of Director Rubascu, who was curious about what the policies were during I think the May Personnel Committee meeting. It was a discussion related to compensation adjustment for one of the directors. And it wasn't identified as being, outside market, and it wasn't identified, that the request that was being, the prompt that was being requested was outside of the pay schedule. And that's where the question came in. Well, what is our policy? What are our compensation? So the purpose for bringing it forward was at the request of Director Rubascu to allow Personnel Committee to review it and make suggestions for modification. Ask questions, and I'm sorry, I started off really bad, I recognize that. Your question threw me off because I had a whole script ready to go over and explain our, no worry, it's my fault.
Not unusual.
Yeah, no worries, so I wanted to just provide a quick overview, which might answer some of your questions.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So, just a quick overview of what you have before you. So ReGen maintains obviously individual classification job descriptions. And these are reviewed, and these set the standards for performance and what is performance and expectations, essential functions. Those are developed when we have a new role, we work with the department manager requesting the position to understand what is the need. And based on that, HR will do its legwork to do a brief market comparison to see, well, what are other people in this need? How are they, what are the requirements for those positions and what are the compensations for those positions? We have a couple tools that we use to set the original classification schedule. One of them is informal market analysis, and we do this just online. Go out, check in search engines to see what other companies are, where we find positions that are vacant, that are and compare pay. And nowadays it becomes easier because California requires employers to post the salaries for those positions. So that's one way to do a comparison. Then we also have a tool that we use. It's the Employer Economic Research Institute. It's a national database that the companies that perform compensation studies use to do market analysis. So we subscribe to that. We do a comparison and validate the information that we're seeing locally. And establish the six-step classification schedule. Job descriptions are then reviewed. Whenever a vacancy becomes available and there's need to repost that job, just to ensure, we check in with the manager to ensure that the role remains the same, that there are no substantial changes. We make whatever changes are necessary at that point, or if the job becomes very different than how it was originally created. And we work with the departments. There's HR is not aware unless managers are making us aware that this job has changed substantially. Then performance is managed by the department manager. Employees are provided feedback. We encourage them to do it on a regular basis, recurring basis, and not wait for having performance conversations with employees once a year. We encourage them to have these performance conversations more regularly, especially when they start identifying issues or concerns with the individual. We have a progressive disciplinary policy, and so the process requires that they first make the employee aware that the concerns, and then clarify or reset expectations, and give them a chance to turn it around and make improvements. If improvements are not seen at that point, then we potentially could start the disciplinary process, which begins with the coaching conversation, a verbal warning, written warning, suspension, termination. We don't do a lot of terminations, as you may have recalled. We have pretty good turnover. Employees are given ample opportunities to correct behaviors or issues or performance. And so it takes a lot for someone to eventually work through the disciplinary process and move on. So that's how we manage performance. Employees are provided a formal disciplinary process annually, and that is tied to the pay step advancement. So the employees receive a performance review on their anniversary month. And at that point, the annual pay step increases within the six-step schedule. That's when those are awarded contingent on satisfactory performance. If an employee is not eligible to receive a pay step because of unsatisfactory performance, it should not be a surprise to them. By the time they get their annual review, they should have already been coached. They should have already been probably issued a written warning of some sort. So it should never come as a surprise. Most employees, they're given a chance and they correct the behavior, and so they're eligible for their pay step. So employees typically start at step one unless they come in with ton of experience and are also, unless they come in with a lot of experience that warrant a higher step at the start, Or it's one of those very difficult to fill positions. And so, in order for us to, attract, someone, especially coming from out of the area, Felipe, the general manager, has the authority to extend offers of, up to step 6. Typically, he measures, I mean, I think we've extended offers at step 3 and 4. For certain really difficult to fill positions, but for the most part, you know, they come in at step 1 or 2. Step 6, the final step in the classification pay schedule. There's a longevity element tied to that, so employees are not eligible for step 6 until they've been with the agency at least 7 years, or they've been at step 5 for 3 years. So the second caveat really applies for those who possibly promoted into that class, and they promoted at a higher step. You know, as long as they've been here for 7 years in a different position, they would have to stay there for, you know, 3 years at step 5 before they are eligible for step, or for step, the final step, step 6. So the outside of the 6-step classification schedule, we also do the market adjustments that Felipe was explaining. And these are not described in the policy before you. But it is part of the labor negotiations process, and those are tied to the total compensation studies that we do as part of that labor negotiations process. The direction that we have heard from the board in the past has been, you know, in terms of compensation philosophy, to maintain market median. And so based on the results of the comp study, we look at the study clearly identifies those positions that are within and outside the market. And for those that are below market, the compensation experts who prepare the study also include a recommendation of how what the agency could do to bring those classifications up to market. And typically this includes a phased market increases over a 2 to 3 year period, depending on how low below market median these classifications are. For those classifications that are above the market, what we have tried to do in the past, and this last time in labor negotiations, was obviously to negotiate that with the union. And unfortunately, we have until this last 2023, the last comp study that we did, 24. The last comp study that we did is when we were successful in getting the classifications that were above what it was, 10% or more above market, redlining to freeze for 2 years. So for anyone who was, any classification that was found to be 10% or more above market, they would be redlined and not receive a COLA for 2 years. Except for those classifications that are hard to fill. So we have the heavy equipment mechanics, the technicians. The comp study tells us they're around 20% of our market. Engineering positions, same thing. But those are very difficult to fill. So the region made the decision that we need to retain those employees, retain that talent, and so it's acceptable to pay 20% of the market for those difficult to fill positions. And so the pay is the 6 pay schedule plus market adjustments based on compensation study, and those have to be negotiated. So it's not just region making the decision, okay, we're gonna increase your pay because the comp study tells us you're 10% below. We need to negotiate with the union on what that phased adjustments look like. And so this last time we were successful in doing that over a 3-year period. So 5% every year. So for for a classification that was found to be 12% below market, year 1, they would get 5, year 2, they would get 5, year 3, they would get 2. So up to bring them up to the 12%. market median. And then, so that's, those are the compensation tools that we use here at ReGen. They are tied to performance, with the exception of the market adjustments. Outside of those two, we don't really have an additional, merit separate from the standard step, which is tied to, and which is contingent on the employee meeting, expectations. So there is a merit element to that as well.
Great.
Sorry, getting long-winded.
I'll thank Darvin.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was, thank you for bringing this forward, and I had asked for it to come back, I think after there was one staff, position where we had approved a request sort of out of the norm, and so I was curious how that fit with our current policies. It sounds like this policy generally applies to most positions and is working well. I know, I appreciate that we do have evaluations that happen here. It sounds like those are pretty standard and all of our employees are getting them,
Yes,
so that's
and
great.
so the performance reviews were
Performance
actually
reviews.
developed with input from department managers, so
Right.
I worked with department managers maybe 8-9 years ago. To identify core competencies. What are the things that you value about your team? And so we created a form, and we still use the form for those who prefer to complete a paper performance review as opposed to completing the review in Paycom online. It's the same questions, the same core competencies. It's based on input from department managers and supervisors, and some of the core competencies, for example, that employees are rated on are job knowledge, productivity, quality, dependability, teamwork, communication, attendance, initiative, judgment, safety. And then there's, for certain positions, office staff, and I think the intermediate level classifications, we also include a couple open-ended questions, what are they doing really great? Well, actually, it's important to give the employee positive feedback about, so that they continue to do what they're doing really well. And also, what are some of the areas or opportunities that you would like to see them improve, and how are you going to support them? So those are part of the performance review process.
That's great. So those are all good things, and I appreciate all that, and then the step process is clear and consistently followed, so appreciate all of that. And then, the compensation philosophy is one, do we have that in writing as well?
I don't know that we have it in writing,
One of my favorite things about ReGen, to be honest, is the way in which we do our top and bombs and tie it to the negotiations process. I think it's really smart and allows us to, I think, manage our budget and manage keeping us within that middle line. And so many of our other organizations, we just do our typical, like 2% or whatever the annual wage is, but then we're doing cost and comp separate from that. So it makes it, we fall, I mean, I don't need to name names of other agencies, but like, it allows us to get really out of whack, where you have some positions that continue getting up and up and up, and then other positions that fall lower and lower and lower, but allowing ReGen to sort of really hold the line on that middle. I think it works really well here, and so I've been really impressed and pleased with that approach. So, if we don't have it in writing, I think it would be a great thing to get in writing, as a strategy or as a practice that we're using, so that we can,
Yeah, I think your feedback is just spot on, right? It's an item that didn't exist before. We got ourselves a 5-year term when we entered into that negotiation, which was probably more than what we expected. 5 years was definitely
yeah.
a good position for us, because it's a fixed number now every year moving forward, without it being a rolling target at the time of negotiations. So I really like your comments, whether we have it in writing on the outside, yet we want to continue to make that practice, and that's not gonna happen without good relationships. Berta had gone through several of these prior, and they were difficult, they were not easy, and They attempted to do, these negotiations in groups. Everybody, all the units together, they've attempted to do them separate, and I think we've kind of nudged to, we can do all the groups with the exception of allies. That's how we wanna keep them segregated, yet keep the same philosophy, so I appreciate the feedback there. I do have one suggestion is, probably the reason why we're covering all this stuff is, do we need to have language in there that allows the general manager to bring these recommendations like I did during budget season for the director of engineering? I like to show kind of where we're at, and I think this is gonna give us a window why we made the decision. So one of our goals is to keep the talent. Here's the 0, here's the -5, here's the +10. For the director of engineering, he was right here. We gave him a +4. Plus the COLA, he winds up right here. He's still within market, but we're retaining and valuing our people and our resources that we have. And I think that's what we want to continue to do is be excited that we have a market median that we can have a realm in, but identifying that he was right here and that there was room for this and the deliverables he was doing. He was picking up more work. He had to learn new attributes of projects. So he was doing a whole bunch of things where, because it's still within the market we want to be in, I think that we should have the ability for general manager to make these sort of recommendations to keep the talent here at ReGen. If we continue to just kind of nickel and dime and hold people here, no, they want to be here. And I think their performance and their attributes is what we want to recognize on how we can keep them towards the higher end of the markets if the values and attributes are warranted. So I asked the question, do we need to have something in our policy that allows the general manager to bring these sorts of recommendations to the group?
And so that was why I brought this
Yeah.
forward, and I think, and it's a question that was sort of raised, it's not addressed in
Yep.
this policy. And
Thank you.
sort of opens up a can of worms. So in some ways, if we just sort of say, okay, we have step increases. So I guess the questions, I have a couple more detailed questions on this particular position. That I think maybe would allow for, how I've seen it handled in other places. So if the position changed, if there were title changes, or if there were, job description changes that would have then justified a change. So it's not just simply saying we're taking a single position. I think that there's a fairness, like a broader perception of how do you ensure that there's a process being followed, that doesn't appear from the outside to be like, well, you get this because you asked for it, and you may be doing great work too, but you don't. Like, why does this position or this person, is it that there was a job description review that what was being done suddenly? Is it
And that
a
was
job
performed, right,
description?
as part of the request for this position here, we did put those attributes into the
So it'd
job
be like
description.
a compensate or a classification review. So something like that, which I'm assuming there may be a different process that is in place. Like in the county, we would have a class and comp review where we review the work duties, and then we classify differently, and then we do like a one-off class and comp outside of our compensation philosophy here at ReGen that we do, that allows us to then create a different compensation amount that we would then implement. So it's a clear process that's being followed, that then identifies a different salary range. So it's not saying we're moving someone into the same salary. There's a totally different salary range that we're talking about based on the duties that are being conducted. So I think I would feel more comfortable framing this as a like a class A comp study, rather than we're just allowing somebody to make a decision that outside of our step increases, one position can get an increase versus another position. I'm clearly communicating that.
Well, you started out saying the squeaky wheel does things.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's the,
I would ask Philippe, like, how would you find out that you want to do this? Because there's another level in between you. So you're saying that they didn't recognize it, that you were just watching it from a distance? and
Yeah, well,
Saw there's something special in this person.
Well, yeah, I think the dynamics had changed, right? His predecessor had left. And so we had to recognize the challenges that he was coming up, and then what other attributes was he picking up, and some of them are, seeing that future vision, right? So we're being very curious about the next 11 years and processes that we wanna take, and he's heavily involved in that, right? So there was other attributes that were above his job description that he was conducting. And I wanted to make sure that those were recognized, and this was the way to do that.
Sounds complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what Bendy's saying is, how can we define that in an enhancement to the policy?
Yeah.
Rather than just saying you can just find somebody that's interesting and.
Yeah.
Give them a raise.
Yeah, well, we were very,
It sounds like a good thing, but I think
Yeah.
it should be, probably have some guardrails on it.
Do we have a class and comp?
So we don't, we have an informal class and comp process, as I mentioned. The position becomes vacant, that's the time that we review it with the manager. To find out if it's the same, what is the need, has the need changed? And once we start learning of what the need is, we compare that to what the job description says this role is to accomplish. And that is the time that HR engages with doing informal comp survey. And also the the Economic Research Institute. And we base the way the changes that the manager is asking against the compensation for that role as it existed. So we have made some changes for certain classifications where the needs have evolved and changed. And so the role needs to be upgraded. And there is a process for that, but what you're talking about is a little bit more structured. And there are comp organizations, the people who do our comp study,
Yeah.
that can do a one-off. If there's a role or position that's been identified as potential for resetting, send it out, have the comp experts review and validate.
Or like in a scenario, like, okay, the former director left, this person has kind of evolved into a different, those things can happen sometimes.
You're taking on responsibilities
Because
because
they
they need to be
didn't
done.
previously have,
Instead of just saying it's not my job.
they're growing into it.
You gotta love that they're doing that. The question is, who's the judge of that? And I think we'll get into that with some of the review things later. So,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say a few things. One is, I think I was remiss to actually hand it to you to first give a summary before we start asking questions.
Sorry.
So thanks for getting us back on track. So typically when I see like position moving, like this is a clear move, right, like getting to a different role. And correct me if I'm wrong, so generally there is at least some form of outreach. To say we're posting a job for this position. Are there other external candidates who want to be viable for the same position? At the salary or step that you're looking for with the qualities, so that thereby you're not discounting. External candidates also trying to fill for the same position. And I'm wondering if that's part of this process or not.
It is, so especially for all of the so. We are required to do that for all of the majority of our classifications that are within a bargaining unit. We're required to post internally, try to recruit internally first before we open externally. For the at wills, the one individual, he's at will, non-affiliated. We did do a recruitment for that role for over a year. And we interviewed several candidates, and at the end of the day, the decision was made to promote an internal candidate into the director role. He had been serving in a different role. And so the promotion was for the strategic director of engineering.
So we did check the boxes, at least
Yes.
to say that, yes, we did the due diligence, correct?
We did.
And so that, at least in this particular document, I don't see it coming out, so I think it may need to be called out.
Okay,
The other thing is this, it says 6.3.2 step advancements are awarded, and it goes into these details. But it doesn't say who's actually awarding them. So maybe you can add language to say, is this the GM, is it the director, or the supervisor, whoever it is?
yeah,
That may help clarify certain items too, and if it's generic, I can say, well, GM has done it, so.
I
that's
awarded
part of the
myself,
job.
I awarded myself that degree.
Right, so it could be construed differently is what I'm getting at, so maybe we can add some extra. To make that, the other thing too is, the last document, the last point is promotions. Wouldn't this be a promotion? I'm just asking generally, wouldn't this qualify as a promotion?
it was a promotion.
Yeah, and so, with just by that fact, isn't it covered in this document? Or am I off?
So specific to the one individual, yes, he was in a different classification, he promoted up to the next classification.
Which is the director of engineering.
Right, so he was senior engineer? What was it?
Senior.
Senior engineer. Promoted to director of engineer. A year ago, because he's been here more than 10 years, he was at the top step of the senior engineer classification. I believe when he promoted, he may have promoted into step 5. And then a year later, he went into step 6, and so he was stopped, that was it. And so he wasn't eligible for another step increase, other than the COLA. And so the request, I think that Felipe, the pay adjustment that he was provided was, in addition to the COLA, that he did not have any more steps. So he was at the top step.
So as it stands with the promoted employee. Is he the maxed out with the steps right
Yes.
now as it stands?
Yes,
And so the COLA increases will be the only order of the day in the future.
yes.
Um,
And then the market evaluations, right? So as we do market evaluations, we'll always circle back and look at our market medium that we have developed. If he falls in those ranges, we're good. If he falls below, then we need to reevaluate and say, he's below market, and do we wanna be put ourselves at risk with someone that has 10 years of experience here to go away and think we can replace them at equal cost and the value that they're delivering today? That would probably never happen.
but I'm just putting it out there too, for the board to say, like, there seems to be like a max step, and it seems like we already have people at the max step, and we wanna retain talent. So if there's any future consideration, I don't know how this. Look on.
But I think that's exactly where we're at, right? This is why we're having a discussion. It's what does that promotion look like if there's no more that exists? Is it step increase, and are we just close to the idea of keeping them within a range or within a market? Or, you know, is talent that difficult to get, right? I think for David, it was we've had several interviews, it was over a year. And I think we made the right decision, right? We retained somebody that knew everything that was going. So I believe maybe we just clean up promotions and look at where the promotions lie. And, you know, when we evaluate that, we bring that to the board and say, this is part of the promotion process. And we can include maybe some items of interest, right? Well, a GM can promote himself, right? That probably be one absolute one, so that we're not, you know, giving self-promotion, but having a trigger mechanism where it can at least be considered, right? Is there enough value there to make considerations for promotion?
Okay. Just some other general questions from my part. When we do compensation, this is a unique, at least in my opinion, this is a unique agency, public agency that's working in this kind of realm. Do we have comparators for other public agencies in this?
Yes, so for the comp study that we do, we have 10 comparator agencies. And there's several are cities and others are I think they're all cities now that I think about it.
Well,
Oh, counties.
municipalities or water agencies, I think are the two that are in there, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the way that we compile that list of 10 comparator agencies was working with the union. In order for them to get buy-in and the results of the comp study, we needed to have them participate in the process of identifying, okay, who are we going to compare ourselves to? And then not only get union participation and input on selecting those comparator agencies, but having The list may have, I think the original list was maybe 15, 16 comparator agencies. With the union, we narrowed it down to 10,
Okay.
so.
So I think that's actually very, very good that you're involved in the union, right through the whole process. It keeps things like a more negotiation, I would say.
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Cleaner.
So, all right, great. Just a couple of questions, just please entertain. So at least in the document, it calls out, performance improvement plan. It calls out there is a mechanism for employees to raise formal issues.
Mhm.
Do we keep track of like how many formal issues we've generated? And who are these formal issues going to? Is it going to the GM? Is it going to HR or maybe legal? How is it managed?
So, we don't have a tracking until, actually, we started tracking this year. In terms of generic employee complaints, not formal, so as far as, I'm sorry. I do track formal complaints, so this would be grievances or lawsuits.
Okay.
More serious, real formal complaints. Then there are those everyday employee complaints. And this, most, I have to say, the majority of the employee complaints are employees complaining about another employee. They're not complaining about their supervisor or manager. Typically, they're complaining about another person. I don't track those. I become aware of them, HR becomes aware of them from the manager and supervisor when they need assistance and helping navigate that situation, or address the situation if it becomes a disciplinary, there's just need for discipline. And I haven't been logging them, and I realized, when we did the workshop in February, when I reported out that in 10 years, we haven't had any grievances or lawsuits. I thought, well, maybe I should track those informal, those everyday complaints, and I try to keep a log as I become aware of them. But I think a lot of these are resolved within the department themselves.
Yeah, I think the formal, like you mentioned, there seems to be some classification, grievances, or with that, it makes sense to track them. And the last question, and this probably I can find out later too, but I'll ask, the MOU that was signed is, so you said 3 years, is that like now due 2027 or?
So we have three units, management unit, support unit, which is administrative staff or office staff, and operators, all the heavy equipment operators and mechanics. We just signed a 5-year contract with them, so their contract doesn't expire until 2029.
Okay.
Then we have the allies unit, they're the sort line laborers, entry level classifications. There's about maybe 40 of those employees. Their contract expires next year in 2026. And I think the last contract we did with them was over for a 3-year period. And so we'll be negotiating with that unit next year.
Okay, thank you. So I think just going back to the agenda item itself, like, it seemed like the original intent was what caused, and should we review this? And I think we have some general direction on how we need to proceed. Were there any other questions from?
Yeah, so just to clarify the direction, so there were some minor edits, that you suggested. I support those. Are you support those? We talked about, trying to draft up the compensation philosophy so that was, in writing. Do we agree on that?
Sorry, before we agree on that, is that something that you suggest we do or?
So although it's not written anywhere, we get the guidance prior to labor negotiations, our first meeting with the board in getting their direction and guidance on how they want us to approach this unit, this contract negotiation. What is the philosophy? So it happens in closed session, it's directly from the board, it's not written anywhere. And the guidance has been market median. But if we want to record it and document it, then I think this would be the time to do it within this policy.
Yeah, or similar, like an adjacent policy. And I think, like the comparable county or the comparable agency. I'm just thinking like the county has a compensation philosophy that's a public document that the unions have provided their input into, we've all signed off on it. It talks about what our median is, the -5 + 10. It talks about all the things that we've all openly agreed to. And it just is like, this is our commitment to our employees.
I think what you guys are trying to hear is that philosophy to slow people down and increase people up and knowing that it's good.
Yeah, stuff that is public, that is not the closed session level, but the most basic of like
The frame,
the framework, yeah.
Yeah.
So that portion of it, to be clear, thank you.
How often do you look at the market median? How often does that happen? Because obviously, if everybody's doing this, it's,
it's, yeah.
It is.
we're increasing it by all of us making adjustments.
And they are, once we do it, we're getting calls, it's like, what is your, and then we're responding to surveys all the time ourselves. So, we typically do it the year that a contract expires, because we want fresh data. We don't wanna do it premature, or now we can't use that comp study because that was last year.
So it's only good at that moment.
It's good for, I would say, about a year.
If even,
If even, yeah, I'd say like a half a year. Because then, you know, the union could talk about,
like they do their own and then you negotiate it and then, yeah.
You called it annual disciplinary meeting. Did you mean to say that?
Did I say annual? I maybe I meant annual performance.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I wrote it down, but I know that you just.
Performance.
You made a comment about 20% over folks. Do they get adjustments?
So they're still eligible for the COLAs, and so it's basically, if the comp study tells us that certain classifications are, 15-20% over, if they have been identified as a difficult to fill role, or they're all essential, but more, so I use the word difficult to fill role. That means we don't touch their compensation, they stay the same, and they continue to get the COLAs.
You have to take care of them when you lose them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have a process comment, if you don't mind, on the documenting the compensation philosophy and where that lives. I think that the excerpt that Berta provided comes out of the employee handbook, right? Which is its own sort of feature. And so it might be wise to document the compensation philosophy, but in a separate document that it's its own, and maybe it's a little bit more nimble for the board, in the event that you decide to change it, you're not going back in and define the employee handbook as much as just writing down your philosophy.
And we have several standalone policies for that reason, they're we keep them separate, because we need to be able to modify them.
Yeah, because of Word document.
Okay. So I agree, draft for review, by the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in regards to the question about this sort of director of engineering question and like who and how we do that, I think. I guess I feel a little nervous about just saying that we can change position. Compensation outside of a class and comp study. But I would definitely be supportive of adding some sort of process to do a class and comp, especially because what I hear is that the job description, the rationale for changing this pay was because of a change in the job description. And that it had been a year since the class and comp had been done when this position was vacant. So there was a vacant position for director of engineering. We did some sort of class and comp to determine what the job description was and the salary was. We interviewed, we recruited, we filled the position was filled internally. The person was in it for a period of time. There was some change to the job description or the actual functioning of the position. So at that point in time, there were more duties than what we had originally envisioned. So at that point, I think that in my mind, the best way to handle that, if we could, would be to do a new class and comp for that role. Add up the new job description, create a new salary range for that position. And have that new salary range be implemented for that position. So that we're really clear about, we're still following this policy here, but we're identifying this, we're paying this person for the actual duties that are being done in some sort of structured way. I think that would be my preference. for a process to follow.
And that also opens up, essentially we're setting up a precedent for future too with that.
It could be, yeah, I mean, and also if we do have positions where there are, you know, we've got someone in a role for 20 years or 10 years. Or however long, and there are significant changes. If we're saying the only time we do class and comps for some of these at-will positions is when there's a transition. Like, at some point, we need to have a process for how often are we doing class and comps on at-will positions?
We do it at the same time that we do the bigger study, which is when the 3
So
contracts
at-will,
expire.
so every 5 years.
The last contract was a 2-year contract, so it had been done in 2 years prior than 2024.
2 years.
Yeah, so in this case, we might need to, because we might not wanna wait till,
Probably
5 years.
at the 30 year, I think
Yeah,
the recommendation would be at the 30 year, because that's how far we went out with the over and under.
Yeah,
So it may be a good time to reevaluate there and say, here's where the market's headed to, or have we kept up, have we not?
yeah,
And make some realizations as we were getting prepared for the next negotiation.
yeah. And are we doing all of our at-wills every
Yes,
3 years?
Yes,
We are.
we do them when the bargaining is gonna happen, so this one, essentially, we could wait till the 4th year and then do it right before the expiration. But I don't recommend that, we may wanna do the at-wills when we do
Okay.
the allied unit, just so that we can have it,
So we're typically doing them every 3 years. I mean, I trust our GM, like if there is a one-off where we need to do
Yeah.
a one-off. I think I'm comfortable giving that
Yeah.
authority, but I'm more comfortable giving the authority to do a one-off plus and comp than I am just saying change the salary.
Sure.
So
okay,
that's, I think, where I'm at on that, but I don't know if that Dale and Chops, where you guys feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I don't know, I think we discussed this at length at this
Yeah,
point, so,
okay.
and we have some guidance, I think, generally, Felipe, and I think all of this requires us to meet again to review what you put together. So I think there'll be some room for us to make some more tweaks, and it'll be, the philosophy will be more outside of the employee handbook. I don't know if the personnel committee has its own little policy, like framework somewhere that we can review,
I can
but,
draft something,
okay, but we'll review that.
bring it back, well, the new comp philosophy and the edits to this, to the current policy of you.
Sounds good. Sounds good, thank you. All right, okay, we're moving on to the next item, thank you, everyone, and I'm not going up to public comment, noting that there's nobody here. So item number 6, general manager communication, anything?
Yes, just one is that we tentatively will have a August board meeting. We had potentially talked about having no board meeting, but because we have an item that has to do with our cover aerated static pile project, our compost project, we will have a board session to approve an item for the compost project that we have going on. So just plan on a short August board meeting.
So I say that's a board meeting, not this meeting, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
I'm looking to still keep finance and personnel committees no for August, but still have the board meeting that's required so that we can approve an item for the engineering department.
The August 6th.
It says August.
So he's talking about canceling August
Oh, canceling August
6th
6th,
and keeping August
Sorry,
22nd.
got it.
Yeah, and if I may, I'll just toss it out there. For the few, they're growing, but for the few boards and agencies that I've had, typically July is the vacation time. So if you can see in the future, maybe July could be the non-board meetings, that will help. I would say at least in my side immensely.
So, okay,
Long.
I like it. Good.
All right, item number 7, any future agenda items that anybody wants to bring to the table? I don't have any. Anything? No, okay. All right, then, if that's the case, we'll move to closed session here.